You've already heard this idea that business analysts are the link between the business side and the IT side. In this video, I'm going to illustrate to you what that actually means and what kind of skills you need to learn to become an effective business analyst to be able to get these two sides to be able to work together with each other. So the concept here is one that floats around a lot, and it is essentially put out there by a lot of people who kind of are trying to explain what a business analyst does. The illustration is meant to give you a deeper understanding of what that actually means. All right. And so when you look at the illustration, you'll see that we have the business analysts in the middle here that are essentially acting as the go-between between the business side of the company and the IT side of the company. And in most companies, and especially in large scale enterprises, these are usually two completely different divisions and they have different people working in them who are responsible for different things. When you get onto a project as a business analyst, your job essentially becomes to become the wedge in between these two and to make sure that you, as an analyst, as a business analyst, can really start to understand the business at a level of detail where you can become very intelligent and really up to speed on what it is that the business is doing today, what it is that they need to be doing in the future, and to start to understand not just their domain, but to understand some of their pain points and their challenges and everything else that kind of goes along with that. And so when you first join onto a project, one of your main focuses is really just kind of starting to focus, right? Depending on the level of seniority you're at as a business analyst, you start to focus on understanding this side of the business. And the more senior you are, typically the more interaction you get to have with more senior level people. So if you're like a very senior level business analyst, like we have our business analyst Shauna here, there's a good chance that you're going to be working with a lot of director level people and sometimes even a lot of vice president level people to understand their vision of what they want their future state of the world to be like, right? But when you're first starting out your career, you typically start out working, right? Let's say you're a junior analyst here, like Justin, that we have in our course materials. You're typically working with somebody like an Ingrid, who is typically working with somebody like a Shauna, and usually you have a full business analysis team that is leading the entire initiative. So when you're on a project, there's a group of people called stakeholders. All of your stakeholders are all of these people across these groups here. And as a team, what you're starting to do, what the lead of the team essentially does is they decide, okay, here's the stakeholders you're going to deal with, here are the stakeholders I'm going to deal with, and then we're going to sync back up and see what we've essentially found out. They might assign you as a junior analyst, depending on what kind of skill set and background you're coming from. As a junior BA, you might be the person who has to actually have the conversations with the end users of the system, right? And these are the people that are on the business side of things. And you may be expected to communicate some of the needs of the users to the development team here. So you may actually be having direct conversations with the dev team, but to help them understand really kind of the user level needs. But you have to understand that as an analyst, the user level needs aren't just the only types of needs that you need to uncover, right, as a team. And so that's why oftentimes on larger scale projects, you have a team of analysts, and each of those analysts kind of has to understand the different levels of an organization and essentially understand what the needs are really at the vice president level, at the director level, at the manager level. And then the analysts who are more junior tend to focus on understanding the needs of the user level. And so as an analyst, when you start to get onto larger size projects, what starts to happen is that you again you stop operating as a solo business analyst and you start to become part of a team. And as part of that team, you have to kind of play your role depending on where the lead assigns you. You kind of play your role in understanding the different levels of needs that exist on the business side of things. Now, on the IT side of things, it's very similar, right? Because as an analyst, your job, again, as we said earlier, is to understand the business needs, but also to be able to kind of translate that into your technical team's language so that they understand what it is that your customers actually need, and so that they can start designing the solution, architecture. There's a lot of work that has to happen before they start building. So again, your team lead will oftentimes decide, right, who is communicating what to who. And so as a senior analyst here, somebody like a Shauna might try to understand the high level understanding from what the director and the vice president says and work directly with the architect here to help them understand big picture wise what it is that the customers are looking for, and then delegate the detailed requirements that need to be produced at the user level down to the rest of the team here. So Shauna essentially might have Ingrid and she might have Justin here go out and do all of the detailed requirements once she's updated the architect on what the high level needs are. You as a junior analyst would essentially then engage with these stakeholders here and try to understand their world, try to understand what their pain points are, what their needs are of the future state solution that your team is supposed to be building. And then what you're doing is you're translating that essentially into what your development team needs. And once your development team kind of understand that, then there is another one set of stakeholders here that you have downstream, which are the QA people that you also need to communicate those needs with, so that between the development team and the QA team here, between these two groups, they can essentially build the solution and they can test the solution to make sure that it is going to satisfy the user need before the DevOps person on the project starts doing the releases to the customers, so that they can actually start to use whatever solution you and your team have developed for them based on their requirements. So when we zoom back out of the picture, you can see what the life cycle of a business analyst role on a project essentially looks like, right? You get onboarded onto a business analysis team, right? And we're speaking mostly to junior BAs here. When you get onboarded onto a team, your team lead is going to decide which area of the business you're going to be responsible for speaking to, how to align what your findings are with the rest of the team here, okay? And then to translate those customer needs into what the technical team needs, so that the technical team can essentially start to build, right? So you're essentially starting your conversations on the business side. You are aligning with the rest of the team to make sure it aligns up with the other conversations that somebody like Ashana has had at this level and at this level, right? And then you are translating that need over to the IT side, and you are giving the IT team the deeper level of detail on the customer needs that they need to actually build a solution. And then those same level of details will eventually go to the QA team, who's going to test the solution. And once the development team has essentially, the development and the test team have done their work to produce a releasable portion of the solution, that becomes the responsibility of the DevOps engineer to make sure that that solution gets renewed. So you're essentially going from 1 to 2, right, to 3, and basically to 4. And at 4, what's happening is that the solution is getting released, and that solution goes back to the people who originally expressed the need for that solution, and they start using it. And what you're doing as an analyst then after they start using it is continuing to get their feedback to make sure it's working the way that it's supposed to be working, essentially. So key points here to understand what a business analyst really does on a project, to kind of connect the gap between the business side and the IT side, is that they have to start to build a deep understanding of their customer situation, their customer's world, and start to understand a lot of the pain points that the customers have. They have to get those customers to be able to express those needs in a way that's clear and concise. Oftentimes when you're dealing with customers, they don't have the language and they don't have the ability to really express their needs in a way that you need to understand as an analyst. And so you have to kind of help them along to try to understand that. And then you have to have the ability to be able to translate that need over to your IT stakeholders, so that your IT stakeholders have the level of detail that they need to actually to design and build a solution that gets released back to the customer. And once that solution gets released back to the customer, what you're doing as an analyst is that you're providing some continued support until the project is essentially over. And then you either might go on your next project, or if you end up in the support world and you continue to support that application throughout the rest of your career, you might spend an extra 5 years just supporting those workers and the needs of the customers on the customer side to continue to use that solution. So that's kind of what the overall life cycle of the business analyst life looks like on a project. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.